Recording.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Boston School Committee. I'm School Committee Chair Jerry Robinson. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I will ask my colleagues to unmute and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Because this is a remote meeting, I will ask Ms. Sullivan to please call the roll.
Dr. Alkins,
Present.
Mr. Cardet Hernandez,
Present.
Ms. Lopera,
Present.
Ms. Mercer,
Present.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Present.
Mr. Tran, he'll be joining us later. Mr. O'Neill, I believe he'll be joining us later as well. Ms. Robinson,
Present.
thank you. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion for the school committee to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of conducting a strategy session related to collective bargaining with the Boston Teachers Union and to conduct a strategy session in preparations for negotiations with the superintendent of schools' non-union personnel. To have this discussion in open meeting could have a detrimental effect on the committee's bargaining position. The committee will return to public session at 6 p.m. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Cardet Hernandez,
Yes.
Ms. Lopera,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, Mr. O'Neill, Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. At this time, I'll ask my fellow members, the superintendent and staff to log off from this public session and join the executive session using the Zoom link sent out by Ms. Sullivan. We'll see you in a moment.
We're live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Boston School Committee. I'm Chairperson Jerry Robinson. The committee just returned from an executive session for the purpose of conducting a strategy session related to collective bargaining with the Boston Teachers Union, as well as preparation for negotiations with the non-union personnel that the superintendent of schools. Tonight's session is being shared live on Zoom. It will be rebroadcast on Boston City TV and posted on the school committee's webpage and on YouTube. Tonight's meeting documents are posted on the committee's webpage, bostonpublicschools.org/school committee, under the March 2nd meeting link. The agenda and meeting materials have been translated in all of the major BPS languages. Any translations that are not ready prior to the start of the meeting will be posted as soon as they are finalized. The committee is pleased to offer live simultaneous interpretation in Spanish, Haitian Creole, Cabo Verdeano, Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, and American Sign Language. After the interpreters finish introducing themselves and providing Zoom instructions, we will activate the interpretation icon, the globe, at the bottom of your screen. Click the icon to select your language preference. Will our Spanish interpreters please introduce yourselves and give Zoom instructions in Espanol?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone, school committee members, distinguished guests. My name is Juan Bernal. I am one of the Spanish interpreters assigned for this meeting today. Muy buenas noches para todos, bienvenidos. Mi nombre es Juan Bernal, soy uno de los 3 intérpretes para español asignados para la reunión de hoy. Para accesar el servicio de la interpretación, por favor, localicen el globo ubicado en la parte inferior de sus pantallas, hagan un clic sobre el globo y seleccionen español como su idioma de preferencia. De cualquier manera, si se está conectando de un iPhone, de un iPad o de una tableta, busquen los 3 puntos que aparecen en la parte superior de la pantalla donde dice Language Interpretation y seleccionen español como su idioma de preferencia. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. The next interpreter may proceed.
Thank you. Will our Haitian Creole interpreter please introduce yourselves and give Zoom instructions in Haitian Creole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sir Joe Saint-Hilaire, Haitian Creole interpreter. Nous prenons plaisir encore après-midi pour nous présenter l'interprétation ça. C'est moi-même avec Nadège qui a assuré lui. Si vous avez besoin d'entrer dans la conversation, vous êtes capable de cliquer sur l'écran là, en bas écran là, ou après un globe, ou choisir l'en créole là, ou entrer là-dedans. Pas hésiter, dire tout ce que tu as besoin de dire, poser des questions, n'a pas interprété le pour. Nous souhaitons d'ores et déjà bonne écoute. Thank you.
Thank you. Will our Cabo Verdeano interpreter please introduce yourselves and give Zoom instructions in Cabo Verdeano?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Boa tarde. Meu nome é Josiane. Juntamente com o Armando, nós sabemos ser meus intérpretes de crioulo para que a reunião ali, para ter acesso à interpretação simultânea, nós clica no ícone de globo, na parte inferior de nosso ecrã e seleciona Cabo Verdeano. Se você usa algum dispositivo móvel, você clica na parte superior, naqueles 3 pontinhos e seleciona Cabo Verdeano. Muito obrigada. Thank you. We may proceed.
Thank you. Will our Cantonese interpreter please introduce yourselves and give Zoom instructions in Cantonese?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. Terry and my name is Anna, will be your Cantonese interpreter for the meeting tonight. 大家好，我 Anna， 我同 Terry 係你今天晚上嘅廣東話翻譯員。一陣間見到個地球儀時候撳落去揀廣東話，就會去到廣東話嘅翻譯頻道噶啦。如果用手機嘅話咧，麻煩你撳開3個點，再揀更多，再揀廣東話 Cantonese， 亦都去到呢個即時翻譯頻道。唔該晒，一陣間見。Terry, your turn.
Thank you, Anna. Hi, my name is Terry. I'll be your Cantonese interpreter. 大家好，我係你哋嘅另外一個廣東話翻譯。我哋一陣見啦。Thank you.
Thank you. Will our Mandarin interpreters please introduce yourselves and give Zoom instructions in Mandarin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Tina Wei Li, and I will be the Mandarin interpreter tonight. 大家好，我和李伟今天是您的普通话的同传翻译。那么一会儿他们把这个翻译的功能打开之后，请你呢点击地球仪，然后选择我们的普通话。如果您是用平板、iPad 或者是手机上线的，请你点击3个点，然后选择语言选项。我们一会儿见。Go ahead, please, Wei.
Thank you. Will our Vietnamese interpreter please introduce yourselves and give Zoom instructions in Vietnamese?
Good evening, everyone. My name is V. I will be your Vietnamese interpreter for tonight's meeting. Yun and I will be switching back and forth. Kính chào quý vị. Tôi tên là Vi. Tôi và chị Duyên sẽ là thông dịch viên của quý vị. Vào buổi tối ngày hôm nay, xin quý vị nhìn vào màn hình và tìm quả cầu. Khi tìm vào quả cầu thì bấm vào tiếng Việt để có thể nghe được thông dịch viên dịch lại cho quý vị hiểu. Cảm ơn rất nhiều. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have 2 ASL interpreters, Kylie Kirkpatrick and Michael Hirschberg. Thank you. Thank you all for assisting us this evening. And thank you to all of the BPS staff behind the scenes who also provide support for our virtual meetings to run smoothly. We will now activate the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. I'd like to remind everyone to speak at a slower pace to assist our interpreters. Thank you to everyone who signed up for public comment. Sign up for both public comment periods closed today at 4:30 p.m. Please make sure that you are signed into Zoom under the same name you used to sign up for public comment. You can use the Zoom tools to rename yourself so that committee staff will be able to recognize you when it comes time to call on you. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll move on to the approval of minutes. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 15th, 2022 school committee meeting as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Cardet Hernandez,
Yes.
Ms. Lopera,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Tran,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
The minutes are approved unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Thank you to the members and to the community for joining us here this evening for a special convening on the superintendent's departure at the end of the school year and the planning for hiring of our next leader for BPS. Since the mayor, superintendent, and I jointly announced the superintendent's departure in June of 2022, our teams have been working collaboratively to outline next steps and have remained in close contact while also assuring that school district operations have remained tightly managed. We have a lot of work to do to address as a district and committee, including reviewing the budget, continuing our work to recover from the pandemic and accelerate learning, planning a strong summer for our students, and monitoring implementation of the many policies this committee has adopted in the past year. The committee has three main objectives this evening. First, we will review the separation agreement between the Boston School Committee and Dr. Cassellius. Next, we will review the RFP for the search firm and the makeup of the superintendent search committee and discuss next steps for approving the membership. Finally, we will review the schedule for the upcoming community engagement process. Before we dive into the objectives of our meeting, I want to take a moment to echo the words from Mayor Wu. Dr. Cassellius came to Boston with a compelling vision for BPS. She spent her first several months visiting every school in the district, listening, learning, and seeing for herself the incredible opportunities and challenges Boston faced. In collaboration with students, educators, families, and community members, she developed a strategic plan with big and bold ideas and set about implementing that plan. She was relentless in centering the needs of our students and in her determination to provide more equitable opportunity for all of our students. And then, not even a year into her tenure, all of our worlds changed forever with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. This has been a very challenging few years, yet Dr. Cassellius's leadership and dedication have not wavered. She responded quickly and decisively when we have had to quickly shift the way we do our work. And she continues to lead us through ongoing uncertainty and evolving circumstances. As we continue assessing the impact of the pandemic on our students and families, it is clear that we have a long road to recovery ahead. But that journey is clearer because of the roadmap Dr. Cassellius has provided. With investments in over 130 social workers, 119 family liaisons, and an additional 49 school psychologists, a nurse at every school, and many other key student supports made possible through a strong commitment from the city in her first year as superintendent, the district is well on its way to the quality guarantee parents and families expect and deserve from every school in Boston. In addition to securing historic funding for BPS that provided hundreds of needed student support positions, Dr. Cassellius oversaw long overdue reforms that eluded other superintendents for years. A new exam school admissions policy that expands access and opportunity for all students, which will increase racial, ethnic, geographic, and socioeconomic diversity at our exam schools, a set of consistent and rigorous academic standards through implementation of Mass Core, and more robust privacy protections for students will make BPS a more equitable, effective, and inclusive district in the years ahead. Could go on, but our time tonight is short and our work is important. What I will say now is thank you, Dr. Cassellius, for your service to our city and most importantly to our students. Brenda always says we must measure everything in student benefit. There's no doubt that she lived up to and modeled exactly what that looks like, and that BPS is better because of the work she has done. I will now move on to the three objectives I mentioned earlier in the meeting. First one is the separation agreement. Over the past few weeks, the Corporation Council for the City of Boston and the Council for Dr. Cassellius discussed and negotiated the terms of a mutual separation agreement. Both the City of Boston and Dr. Casalius have reached an agreement, and I will be asking the committee tonight to authorize me to sign the separation agreement on behalf of the school committee. Before the committee votes, I will outline the terms of the agreement. First, the agreement that was reached is fair for the City of Boston, the school district, and for the superintendent. Its terms are consistent with previous separation agreements between the school committee and outgoing superintendents. The agreement is consistent with the terms of the superintendent's employment contract and state law and does not provide any more than what the superintendent's contract and state law requires. Under the terms of the agreement, Dr. Casalius will receive 1 year of her annual contract salary totaling $297,138. She will also receive $16,900 in back pay for contractually required minimum salary increases that she has not received over the course of the last 2 years. Dr. Casalius will also receive payment for her accrued but unused time off at the time of her departure. These payments are consistent with what is required pursuant to the terms of her employment contract and state law. As I stated, this is a fair separation agreement for all parties, which provides Dr. Casalius with what is contractually owed to her under her employment contract and state law, and is consistent with previous separation agreements with outgoing superintendents. The committee will be asked to vote to authorize me to sign the separation agreement on behalf of the school committee later this evening. At this point, I want to open it up to the committee for any questions or comments. Dr. Alkins?
Yes, I just want to thank both councils for both parties as for engaging in this process and getting to a good deal on an agreement. And I also just want to also thank Dr. Casalius for her work in laying such a critical foundation and infrastructure for the future of BPS families. And that this process will be very instrumental in how we think about the future, and particularly the reparation of trust in this body of the school committee in BPS, and what this means for really supporting families as we move forward in the new committee search. So I want to thank Dr. Casalius, thank all the parties involved, and look forward to the learning that we've had during this process.
Thank you. Mr. Cadet Hernandez?
I want to echo my colleague, Dr. Elkins, and say thank you to the superintendent for her service and for her vision, and of course, to all of the council that was involved in realizing this agreement. We were able to move fast in a really difficult moment. But I also want to say, I think what is on so many parents' minds who are watching the moves that we make right now, which is that there is a lot of trust that has eroded given the sort of movement in superintendents across our system. And so I'm excited about the conversation we're going to have later tonight around the search committee and how we build that process so it also rebuilds trust. And I think as we vote on this contract and allow you to move forward, I also think it will be really important for us to have conversations around what this contract looks like moving forward, given the various scenarios that allow folks to stay and also allow folks to go.
Thank you. Are there any other comments before I move on? Mr. O'Neill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I echo my comments, my colleagues' comments to date first, and thanks to Superintendent Casalius for the work that she did and the groundwork that she laid. And also to the City Corporate Council for his work on this. And I accept his recommended course of action. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Right. I'm going to move on to the next part of this conversation, which is, oh, sorry, excuse me. Mr. Tran, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Dr. Casilius, who has been, in my own opinion, the best superintendent that we have so far for the last several terms of mayor, since Dr. Patterson, I would say. I'm pretty saddened to see her leave, given all the work that she had put into the BPS system, especially with the community involvement, despite the fact that, you know, there are still dissensions and other kind of internal or external disagreement with her move. I see it as a plus. I see it as a positive thing that she had done for the BPS. What I can say is that her understanding and application of the equity principle is aligned with me very much, despite the fact that some of those policies that she initiated may have certain kind of adverse impact on my own ethnicity or my own community thinking. But at the end of the day, recognizing that it is the thing we need to do for equity for Boston Public School, I go along with her at the expense of my community's displeasure with me, and I continue to do that. So I understand. Let me be very clear. I understand the position is political, but to allow a very capable leader to leave our system at this time is something that we must make sure that the next person is up to the task. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. Mr. O'Neill.
Madam Chair, I also just want to thank you for your insistence that we have this discussion and that you lay out in a public open meeting the provisions of the contract and that we vote on it as a committee to authorize you to do it. It is what you are trying to lead on transparency and openness, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to our next discussion, which will be the RFP for the search firm. BPS posted an RFP to hire a search firm to manage the process to hire a new superintendent last week. It is posted on the committee's webpage. The RFP outlines the scope of the work we intend to complete as part of this search. The deadline for firms to respond is March 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is a tight turnaround, but we've already heard from a few interested firms. As Vice Chair O'Neill said at the last meeting, we're going to generate a lot of interest as firms have likely seen the news. The proposals we receive will be evaluated by an RFP evaluation team that will include 1 to 2 members of the search committee, as well as Al Taylor, BPS Chief.
Chair, you're muted.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Let me go back to the top. I'm so sorry. So I obviously you didn't hear me.
Madam Chair, the last we heard is when you were talking about Chief of Human Resources, Al Taylor.
Okay, great. and Naveen Reddy, Business Manager for BPS. The RFP team will present their analysis of the proposals received and recommended selections to the full search committee for its review. The search committee will take its recommendations will make its recommendations to the school committee for a final vote on April 6th. So are there any questions about the RFP? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go on to the search committee. Given the tight timeline, we're proposing a more compact search committee.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't catch it if you said it, but I just wanted to clarify, we do not yet know the cost because we would be waiting for firms to submit bids.
Correct.
But the expectation is this would be paid out of a BPS budget, as
Yes.
opposed to in the past, sometimes
We've gone out.
the committee has solicited donations, but I believe it is your intention that it is paid for out of a BPS budget.
Yes, that is the intention.
Thank you. And obviously, the exact cost will be disclosed when the RFPs.
Well, we know, yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Cadet Hernandez. You're muted.
All right, I'm back. This question may not be for this moment, so just push me to the search committee if that's where this fits. But with the RFP committee, is there going to be since we have recently been down this road, will there be a convening of any of the members from the previous RFP committee and the new RFP committee to talk about areas that were a success or areas that were sort of lessons learned after the fact?
I think once the search committee has been formed, this process will be starting, and I would think that I would leave that recommendation to them. Again, nothing has taken place yet. So once we have a search committee, they will have some time as the RFP is out to bid, and I would assume that they may have conversations to get that kind of feedback. I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Ms. LaPera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question around, you mentioned that there would be folks who are engaging in the search committee who would then also potentially serve on the review of the RFPs. Am I understanding that correctly, or are there other folks who would engage in that RFP review outside of the search committee?
No, the RFP evaluation team will include 1 to 2 members of the search committee, as well as Al Taylor, BPS Chief of Human Capital Officer, and Naveen Reddy, Business Manager for BPS. So basically it will be a group of 4. And again, I would think that taking Mr. Cadet Hernandez's suggestion that they may particularly, the search committee would probably want to talk with some previous folks around their recommendations as well.
Thank you for that clarification.
I don't want to get out of head of the search committee, so yeah, thank you. Mr. Cadet Hernandez.
And I think this is figured out in the RFP process, and I think this is what Mr. O'Neill was asking, but I just want to confirm, there is no budget set for this. Is there a ceiling that we will cap at, or are we just seeing what comes in and then the RFP team makes a decision, analyzing cost as well as?
I think we will go back and review what we have paid in the past to give us a ballpark figure. And then we'll make our, suggestions around that. So I know that in some of the documents of past searches, a lot of that information is there. But again, as I've said, I don't want to get out ahead of the search committee as they go about doing their work, and many of those questions will be asked and answered at that time. Mr. O'Neill.
If I may just add some context to that, if it's okay, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Mr.
please
Cadet
do.
Hernandez. There tend to be 2 types of search firms that work on superintendent searches. The first is ones that specialize just on K-12 district superintendent searches. There are about a dozen of them across the country. They tend to work proposed more back on RFPs in a fixed price cost, fixed price approach of we bid X plus expenses. The other type of search firms are those that tend to work more on, they do some select superintendent searches, but they also work on college presidencies, CEOs of nonprofits. They tend to be mission-driven, focus on mission-driven organizations. They tend to work more on a percent of salary. And so it varies. And so they may bid X percent of salary or X minus 2% of salary, that type of thing. So I'm being very careful in my answer because the rules around procurement are incredibly tough, which is why it makes sense that the chair included 2 specialists from BPS that really know RFP rules to make sure that it's done properly. But we would expect to see, depending upon the type of firm that replies, either they would propose a fixed price cost or they would propose a percent of salary approach. And then typically it is plus expenses, for candidates to travel into the city, that type of thing, background, work, et cetera. And the last point I will make, and a lot of people recognize this, that right now there are a lot of openings across the country, and not only for superintendents, but if you look at the globe in the past 2 weeks, CEOs of nonprofit organizations, CEOs of higher ed have been announcing stepping down. And a lot of firms, quite frankly, are saying that they too are suffering shortfalls of personnel themselves and are not able to put a full commitment to a search and are unable to reply to RFPs. And so it'll be interesting to see the firms that do reply, but you can anticipate that a proposal would be on one of those 2 types. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah. Dr. Alkins?
Just for the sake of understanding transparency, particularly for families, what aspects of this process and thereafter are basically available to public for them to really follow along so that they can understand the process as well?
So couple of things. We have a website, it's already up on the school committee site. And then there will be, and I think there also will be outlined the complete timeline for the search and what will be going on at various aspects of the search, starting out with the listening sessions. And then at every single school committee meeting, there will be an update. There are parts of the search that will obviously need to be done in executive session. That is when the committee will be doing the interviewing of candidates. And then at the end of that, when they have their recommendations, it becomes public again, where the finalists will be interviewed by the public, within the public realm. Usually there are there are groups that will do the interviewing, but everyone is able to weigh in, watch, comment, etc. But so it will be clearly outlined on the school committee's webpage of how this goes on. And there'll be a place there if people have specific questions that they can send in their questions, and then through the committee, they'll get answered. I'm going to turn to Mr. O'Neill again, who's been part of past searches, if there are other things that we should make sure people are aware of.
I think you outlined it, Chair, and I think you had mentioned that you were also about to talk about what the specific process was, but community involvement, Dr. Elkins, is critical, particularly in the upfront piece, because ultimately this committee and the search committee will be voting on a recommended job description, and getting input from our communities is critical in that process to make sure we are collectively headed in the right way and attracting the right type of candidate and laying out a roadmap for candidates of what we expect. So I think a robust listening process up front to allow us to develop that job description and write on it. And then obviously a search always has to enter a quiet phrase, but then at the end, having robust public involvement as well is critical to build acceptance for whomever we ultimately decide is the appropriate superintendent to lead us forward.
Mr. Carter Hernandez.
And Chair, tell me if this needs to go later as well. The process that Mr. O'Neill was just referencing, have we mapped that out given the short timeline that we've told the public that we're operating within? Like at what month we anticipate public engagement happening, et cetera?
We pretty much have a draft of that. Again, remember this, the search committee has not had a chance to even meet yet or meet each other yet. And so they will be confirming that very, very soon into their tenure. You know, we're sort of mapping it back from a decision, hopefully in May, June, and mapping the process back. So we are, you know, shortening some things that would have taken in the past. We might have given, for example, 2 months for people to get their resumes in. This time, it'll only be a month. So I don't want to speak out of turn until they've actually had a chance to post that review of the deadlines. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to search committee. So again, given the tight timeline, we're proposing a more compact search committee than in previous years to increase the probability of identifying openings for scheduling. The search committee will include Dr. Pam Ettinger, President of Bunker Hill Community College, Roxy Harvey, Chair of the BPS Special Education Parent Advisory Council, SPEDPAC, Lorena Lapero, member of the Boston School Committee, Marcus McNeil, student at Fenway High School, Michael O'Neill, Vice Chair of the Boston School Committee, Dr. Carlene Pignato, Head of School, Channing Elementary School, Boston Public Schools, Jean Roundtree, Secondary School Superintendent and former Head of School at Snowden High School, Boston Public Schools, Jessica Tang, President of the Boston Teachers Union, and Jose Valenzuela, teacher at Boston Latin Academy. I would like to propose that we have 3 co-chairs, Dr. Ettinger, Ms. Lapero, and Marcus McNeil, an educator, a school committee member, and a student. This is the right approach for this type of endeavor at this moment. So are there any questions or comments about the search committee? Mr. Hernandez.
Hi, Chair. Can you just walk us through the process that we went under to build, or that you went under to build the search committee?
So the search committee is put together by the chair of the school committee with the mayor's office, the mayor. And there are a number of categories that we usually have included on a search. So we have higher education in terms of Dr. Pam Ettinger. We have both Boston BPS parents in representation, particularly of SPEDPAC and ELLs, et cetera. Roxy Harvey is a BPS parent. She also is the head of SPEDPAC, and she currently now is serving as one of the members of the ELL task force. Usually we have 3 members of the school committee, given the shortness of this and the wanting to have a smaller number of folks. We have 2 school committee members, and we have Lorena Lapera, who also is a parent, and Michael O'Neill, who is both a business person and a member of the school committee and is quite knowledgeable overall about searches and the landscape, all of those things. We have a student, Marcus McNeil. He's a student at Fenway High School. We had a student that served well in the last search, and so that was something we wanted to make sure we were able to have again. We have 2 school leaders, Dr. Carlene Pignato, head of school, the Channing Elementary School, and she is also the member of the OAG task force. And then we have Jean Roundtree, who is a secondary school superintendent and former head of school at South Boston High School. And then we have Jessica Tang, the head of the teachers union. That is a requirement of the search firm. And then we have a teacher, Jose Valenzuela, teacher at Boston Latin Academy. We also wanted to make sure that we had ethnic diversity, male, female, et cetera, diversity. So we've tried to make sure, even with just the 9 people that we have as much diversity inclusion that we can possibly have. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I'm gonna move on to our last portion of this, which is community engagement. And right now, the search committee will host 3 public meetings in March and 1 in early April. And the dates and times of these public meetings will be Wednesday, March 9th, which is right next week, from 6 to 8 p.m. Tuesday, March 15th, 6 to 8 p.m. Thursday, March 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. And Saturday, April 2nd, from 10 to 12 p.m. Our goal is to meet as many of the different levels of availability across our diverse community. The meetings will all be held on Zoom, recorded and posted following the conclusion of each meeting, and will include live interpretation in all BPS languages. Members of the public can sign up by RSVPing on our new website, boston.gov/BPS search. Additionally, members of the public can submit written testimony via email to the school committee at the email address superintendentsearch, one word, at bostonpublicschools.org. We'll be partnering with the search committee to provide alternative ways of gathering feedback from stakeholders, including but not limited to written testimony, online surveys, which will be translated again into all of the major languages. I know this is a lot of information to digest. We have a lot of work ahead of us in a tight frame, timeline. But as I said at our last meeting, our kids can't wait. I'm confident that together we can move this process forward in a thoughtful and collaborative way. I'll now open it up to the committee for questions and comments. Any questions about the engagement? So go ahead, Mr. Carter Hernandez.
It's good. I don't have one right now.
Okay, Ms. LaPera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the thinking around having official modes of engagement for the community. I'm wondering if there's any thinking on engaging the many community partners that we have in doing other ways of having outreach to hear from broader folks in the community. I imagine this is something that we've done in the past.
Yes.
So I was just wondering how that fits into the whole search process.
Again, I think as the search committee comes together, we wanted to put on the table these 4, firm ones, but, we've received emails from a number of community organizations that want to be able to co-host a meeting with us, et cetera. And again, not wanting to get out ahead of the search committee to figure out scheduling of what people can, how many different opportunities we can, take advantage of. I'm sure there'll be other groups meetings as well. I, spoke with Ms. Polanco Garcia yesterday, and one of the things we talked about was hosting a meeting that's predominantly in Spanish, as as a first language versus it being interpreted, so it'll have English interpretation as a way of reaching out to other communities. And other communities may also express an interest in holding a specific meeting with a particular group of people, so we can make sure that all voices are being heard. So we will look at the amount of time. Again, it's short because we want this feedback to be able to help us inform changes to the job description. So again, so we have approximately about a month to do all that. So once the search committee meets and confirms their schedule, then we can look at, between now and the first week in April, how many different opportunities for public comment sessions, et cetera, can be handled. But even if they're not quote official, but they are also held, making sure that any information that is created in those meetings gets fed into the larger process, so all voices can be heard at that point.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I appreciate the thinking around expanding the community engagement as much as possible. And that truly is our charge, right? To make sure that we are bringing folks into the process as much as we can. It is ultimately the vote of the school committee, but we are representing our fellow community members. So appreciate the thinking on that. I love the idea of having a mostly or a first Spanish language. And I'm sure that we can also engage with other communities just like that. So thank you for that thinking.
Thank you. Any other? Mr. Carter Hernandez.
I'm just echoing Ms. Lopera and the thinking around increased engagement, particularly not through translation, but in native language dialogue. I would just also encourage us as we're thinking about that to also do sessions that are centered around students' voices as well as our
There's a special one for students that Ms. Mercer will be co-hosting with BSAC. So there always is a student one as well. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so I know the committee will, when they convene, will figure out how to expand the opportunities, but I just want to make sure while we are under what feels like a really sort of shortened time frame, that it then doesn't feel like the thing that also shrinks is the dialogue that the community gets to have with us. And so I just think it's important for us to sort of norm and name that as a committee, that like we're committed to having a new superintendent in the timeline that the mayor has offered publicly, but at the same time, the thing that won't shorten is the ways that we're listening to people.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but we've done some analysis over the last several superintendent searches, the amount of public comment that we had, et cetera. This is the first time that it's being done over Zoom, and my assumption will be it will provide more opportunity for public comment. I hate to say it, but that there have been times when there were more people from the search committee that had trekked out to an event than the number of people that signed up for public comment or showed up for public comment. So I am hoping that people will take advantage of these opportunities and come on and speak to us. Thank you. Mr. O'Neill. Mr. O'Neill, you're muted.
Of course. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to echo the comments, and I'm really glad we're having this conversation. And regards to make up the committee, it doesn't go unnoted by me that, you named 3 co-chairs, an educator, a parent, and a student. And those are all vitally important voices that we want to hear. And I do, just wanted to share that I know the mayor encouraged you, Mayor Wu encouraged you and the committee to think as creatively and out of the box as possible about the search, and encouraged us to look at the community engagement process going on the police commissioner search.
Right.
And specifically kind of charged us, how can we think differently? So not only community listening sessions, but can we co-sponsor them with some organizations, as you talked about? I was also very encouraged and share with the rest of the committee that the chair and I spoke yesterday with Councilor Mejia, who is the chair of the Education Committee on the City Council. And she also encouraged that we hold listening sessions in native languages other than English, and offered her office as a resource to both co-sponsor some listening sessions and to help make that happen. So I really appreciate the input that she gave, that it appears many of us are echoing as well. So I think this is really helpful for us to think differently and out of the box about how we can do things a little bit differently this time.
Right. And I want to make sure that the members understand that even if you're not on the official search committee, that members are encouraged to attend as many as the listening sessions as they possibly can as well, so that we are all hearing what our public is asking us. Dr. Alkins.
So maybe this is, like, I think, like echoing like Ms. Lopez on my comments, working with local community-based organizations as well to maybe host their own sessions as well. We have several that always are very consistent in public testimony. I think it would be a good idea to probably leverage their attendance and their commitment to change, to also think about and also empowering their voice, since they already have the ear of the community in a very unique way, to help this process along too.
Yes, often what has happened is, even though we have named the dates of 4 sessions, we often look to co-sponsor those with some of those very organizations that you are talking about. But again, as I said, not wanting to get out too far ahead of the search committee, we're just trying to lay out the bones and give them the opportunity to work those things out as they move forward. Okay, so before we move on to public comment, I just want to make sure, are there any more comments from the committee? Okay, so lastly, I'm gonna, if there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to authorize me as school committee chair to sign the separation agreement between the Boston School Committee and Superintendent Brenda Cassellius. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, respectfully, just help me out. I'm sorry, I don't have a copy of the agenda in front of us, but I thought the posted agenda called for votes after public comment.
Yep.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
All right. I missed something somewhere. Maybe I didn't turn over a page. All right, sorry. Okay. So I'll just say the committee looks forward to taking action on this matter later this evening. We have so many comments in here, I got confused. So now we'll move on to general public comment. Ms. Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. The public comment period is an opportunity for parents, students, and other concerned parties to make brief presentations to the school committee on pertinent school issues. Questions on specific school matters are not answered at this time, but are referred to the superintendent for a later response. Questions on specific policy matters are not answered at this time, but may be the subject of later discussion by the committee. We have 17 speakers this evening. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak, and I'll remind you when you have 30 seconds remaining. Those who require interpretation services will receive an additional 2 minutes. Speakers may not reassign their time to others. Large groups addressing the same topic are encouraged to consolidate their remarks or choose a spokesperson to provide testimony. Written testimony is appreciated and encouraged. Please state your name, affiliation, and what neighborhood you are from before you begin. Please direct your comments to the chair and refrain from addressing individual school committee members or district staff. When I call your name, please raise your hand virtually in Zoom. Also, please make sure that you're signed into Zoom with the same name that you used to sign up for public comment. That will allow us to identify you when it's your turn to testify. We'll begin this evening with Maria Mejia. And I'll invite our Spanish interpreter to support our next speaker. I will now turn off the interpretation icon. Interpreters and the public will all be in the main room. Interpreters, please stop interpreting and mute yourself for this part of the testimony. Maria Mejia.
Sí, buenas noches a todos los correspondientes del BPS. Mi nombre es María Mejía y vivo en la comunidad de Roseberry. Mi hijo estudia en la escuela Blaston. Tuve la oportunidad de ver y escuchar el reporte de las noticias de la escuela de Blaston. Y hoy como madre estoy aquí para hacer hincapié. Desde el 2019 se comprometieron a ayudar a la escuela a dar a los 5 millones de dólares para la reparación de puertas y paredes. Esta es la hora en que todavía no han hecho nada. Como madre siento temor de que si pasara algo en la escuela, ¿cómo van a responder si algunas paredes son cortinas? ¿Cómo es posible que eso siga así? No, eso tiene que tener prioridad.
Excuse me, Ms. Mejia. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Could our interpreters please support Ms. Mejia, Juan?
Sí, Ángel.
Señora Mejía, deme un segundito para interpretar lo que ha dicho hasta ahora.
Sí, ok.
I am a parent. I have a student at Braxton. In 2019, $5 million supposedly were going to be funded for the repair of doors and walls, and as of yet, nothing has been done. It worries me as a parent that if something happens in the school, how are you going to respond since some of these walls are basically become as thin as curtains? Okay, continúe, por favor.
¿Cómo es posible que eso siga así? No. Eso tiene que tener prioridad para la seguridad de nuestros niños y de nuestra comunidad.
Okay, deme chance. Okay, how could this continue like this? This has to be a priority for the safety of our children and our community, okay?
Necesitamos saber cuándo piensan hacer esas reparaciones que ha pasado demasiado tiempo.
We need to know when you will be doing these reparations or fixing this since too much time has gone by.
Buenas noches y esperando que nuestras peticiones sean escuchadas. Muchas gracias.
I wish you all a very good night and I hope our petitions are heard and tended to soon. Thank you very much.
Gracias, thank you. I will now activate the interpretation icon and all interpreters will be sent to your channels so you can begin interpreting again. Our next set of speakers is Nancy Lesson, Robert Jenkins, Sharon Hinton, Cecilia Hamilton, and Elise Pector. If you could please raise your hand virtually in Zoom. Nancy Lesson.
Good evening. I'm Nancy Lesson, grandmother of 4 BPS elementary school students. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
I'm Nancy Lesson, grandmother of 4 BPS elementary school students, mother of a BPS high school teacher, member of Mascosh Health Technical Committee, and of BPS Families for COVID Safety. I'm in Jamaica Plain. We support keeping the BPS mask mandate in place for now. Declining COVID cases and the drop in virus found in wastewater is encouraging, but it's very problematic that only 38% of Boston children ages 5 to 11 are fully vaccinated, and that most schools lack HVAC systems to provide optimum ventilation and filtration while this dangerous airborne virus circulates. Also, BPS students, unlike those in suburbs, are more likely to live in multi-generational households, including elders and medically fragile relatives. And the new variant, BA2, 30% more transmissible than the original Omicron, is doubling every week in the US. Last week, it represented 4% of cases. Now it's 8%. Please know that many BPS families strongly support continuing a school mask mandate at this time. We also request attention now to real solutions that will overcome problems experienced last fall and will truly allow students to eat outdoors as the weather gets warmer. I also want to raise a triple crisis facing our schools: longstanding inequity, of which crumbling infrastructure and lack of HVAC systems are examples, the pandemic we've been living through, and the climate crisis. We understand air conditioning units have been purchased for classrooms to address serious summer heat issues. Recently, we heard that these may in fact be heat pumps. Heat pumps are good for cooling and energy efficiency. They are not good regarding an airborne virus, as they do not bring in essential fresh air, but use only recirculated air. Short-term and long-term solutions to BPS's need for proper ventilation, as well as heating and cooling, must work for both our climate crisis and this and future pandemics. Please find expertise to help ensure learning environments have proper temperatures and ventilation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Friendly reminder to please slow your pace for our interpreters. Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Jenkins.
Hello, good evening. My name is Robert Jenkins. I'm a member of the School Site Council for Madison Park, member of the Community Engagement Advisory Council for the district, among other things. What I'm speaking about tonight is a number of issues, or not issues, but I recently sat on the Community Equity Roundtable last week, in which Athletic Director Avery Esdale put a proposal out to change the GPA citywide from 1.67 to 2.0. I think this is a great idea, but I questioned him then that to make sure citywide, and I'm also from Mattapan, but also to make sure that all students are able to attain and maintain a 2.0. When I look at, the high rate at Madison Park of special education students, some of our students now cannot attain a 1.67, which to me is atrocious, because when I went to high school, we had to have a 2.0 or better to participate in any extracurricular activities, especially sports. Another thing I would like to add is that you have students that over the summer work throughout the whole entire school year, come back in the fall and do not have a program to participate in, as such as Madison, for the first time in over 40 years, did not have a football program. School that has well over 1,200 kids, rich in history, alumni involvement. This is, insane. That's one thing that I have to bring out there. Also, too, I would like to speak about the incident involving the Fenway basketball men's and women's teams. These kids worked very hard to get into the tournament, and they did not go because of a big violation. That's just a shame. Our kids work very hard to, maintain a 2.0 or better to participate in athletics, and especially getting ready to go to the state tournament and be told that they can't go, as well as 2 other schools that are not in the district. This cannot go on. We need to really make sure. We need to improve our athletic programs as well. When you're talking about social and emotional learning, you're talking about school spirit, you're talking about camaraderie, those poor kids. One more thing, if I have time to do, I was on one of the hiring committees for Dr. Caselius, and I would encourage the school committee to make sure that you have parent engagement. Parents right now, I go to a lot of meetings, parents right now want to become involved. They have a lot of questions. You should do as many as you can, because as a number of the school committee members have said, we have to broaden our base. We tend to use, BSAC, CPC, DLAC, SPEDPAC, but there are other parents that are not involved in any of those councils. Go back to like what the community involvement and engagement, again, for the new superintendent. Thank you very much. And I love Dr. Caselius.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Our next speaker is Sharon Hinton.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Hinson. I'm a mother, educator, homeowner, advocate, and the president and the executive director of Black Teachers Matter Incorporated. I say homeowner because it's my taxes that are paying you guys. My taxes, the way Prop 2 is structured, pays for the superintendent, for the mayor, for the school committee. And I don't gamble. I don't go to casinos because if I don't hit and somebody hits next to me, I figure they won my money. And so I don't do that. But I feel like we took a gamble, and we've taken a gamble on 7 different superintendents who come in, they're qualified. We do the search committees. And I remember I was in a community meeting when Dr. Casellia said that she was going to be here for the long haul. And I said, I love your ideas. I hope you get a chance to implement them. And she said, well, I signed a contract for 10 years. And I said, so did the other 2, and they're not here, and this is why you're here. Now she's leaving, and I really, really know that she tried. And I love her as a person, but I'm separating what I love in terms of a person versus the job. So last night I talked about the P's. Tonight I'm talking about P's, process. If we don't change the process of how we're doing this, and if this process is not flexible enough in terms of the time frame, we're going to end up with the same thing. I don't know if in this process of the last 15 years and all of these revolving doors of superintendents, if we know why they're leaving. Is it just another P, politics? And so I want Brenda's lawyer. I want Brenda's lawyer that negotiated how she's getting paid with my money to leave and the job is not done. It's almost like you have a baby premature and now you're waiting for someone else to raise it. And so, but we're here. And we're still stuck here. So I love the fact that you guys are having community engagements and open meetings. I can't see the clock. Oh, there it is. Okay. I also love the fact that you're trying to give it in native languages, because I speak several different languages and words don't translate all the time. So I really appreciate that. And the fact that there are people in the committee that are committed to the schools, to the parents. You guys are in the schools. Some of you guys have kids in the schools. My daughter graduated from Boston Public Schools. I attended Boston Public Schools, and she's about to graduate with a master's degree from Northeast University. So I understand what it means to actually stay in there. And I've been a member and parent on the parent site council, the school site council, been involved in search committees, that whole thing. But I also know, as a person that went through the process to try to be there with you on the school committee, what happens when the process is not open. And I get it with, negotiations and how you need to keep certain things quiet and you need to keep certain things within human resources. But if you don't open up this process, then it's still going to be a lack of trust involved. I've got 13 seconds. Thank you. So why is she leaving? She said she wasn't pushed out. The mayor said she didn't force her out. I think we need to know why she left. That's my money that you're taking out of that door. And normally I wouldn't care, but it is my money. It is my kids. I'm a teacher. And I want to make sure that we're invested in, please, whatever it takes. If we get to that 3 months and we still have not picked a valid candidate, let's not be forced to just put a warm body in there because we need somebody. Thank you.
Cecilia Hamilton is not signed into the meeting. So our next speaker will be Elise Pector, followed by Sherry Kelleher, Allison Cox, Ruby Reyes, and Mike Heischman. If you could please raise your hands virtually in Zoom. Elise?
Hi, my name is Elise Pector. I'm a grandmother of 2 Boston Public School students. I'm a member of the Mascosh Health Technical Committee and BPS Families for COVID Safety. I want to talk about a different subject today: the indoor air quality monitors that Boston Public Schools installed using ESSER funds, saying that they were installed to improve air quality. But these monitors have been poorly used and have failed by inaction and by design. The most important use would be to measure carbon dioxide to make sure there's enough outside air ventilation to improve air quality and decrease transmission of COVID. But there have been a number of problems. First, the monitors have not been calibrated. This must be done to make sure they're accurate. Outside air has 400 parts per million. I saw readings today that showed 100 or 200 parts per million. If the readings are wrong, we can't be sure that they're accurate. Secondly, the monitors don't have displays so that the teachers and the janitors can actually see what the readings are. In order to find out what's going on in a classroom, you have to log on, find the building, find the classroom, and see what the reading is. This doesn't help us launch a response. Third, the abnormal results haven't been used to fix problems. 3/4 of the schools don't have ventilation systems. I went online today and I saw that the Curley, Higginson, Hernandez, Kenny, Channing, Young Achievers all had readings of 1,500 to 3,000 parts per million of carbon dioxide in some classrooms. The only reason to measure something is to do something about it. You don't have a real-time measurement unless you want a real-time response. I don't think there's even been a prolonged response. High carbon dioxide levels are associated with poorer learning and problem solving. Poor ventilation has caused the spread of COVID. How can we trust that $10 million more committed to ventilation in fiscal year 23 will be used in a way that truly improves conditions? So like the search for a superintendent, trust, transparency, and openness is an important part of improving the ventilation in Boston Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Kelleher isn't signed into the meeting, so our next speaker will be Allison Cox. Ms. Cox, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. My name is Allison Cox. I'm the parent of 2 kids at Mission Hill School and the co-chair of our school's governance board. I've spoken a number of times to this committee, and I'm here again tonight to continue to ask for your support. I can't speak to what happened at the school from 2014 to 2019. My family's only been there 3 years. What I can tell you is that in my time, we have had a governance board that's prepared to uphold its responsibilities to our community, to ensure accountability of the school's leadership, and to collaborate with the district. The district recently sent out school report cards. If you look at it and compare the 2019 to 2021 MCAS data in the reports, you'll see that at most schools, as well as the district as a whole, they saw passing rates plummet in all 3 subject areas. At Mission Hill, in the same period, passing rates in math were flat, and we showed significant improvement in both ELA and science. Our teachers, in a pandemic, largely on Zoom, at a school with a high percentage of students with high needs, were successful at helping students improve passing rates. That is remarkable. Notably, this time period of improvement coincides with the entire tenure of our now removed school leaders. I hope we see further increases this year, but given the amount of trauma and upheaval imposed upon the school this year, I'm not especially optimistic. An emergency school review was hastily conducted in November. The district received the report in very early January. No information or recommendations from it have been shared yet. I've previously expressed my doubts about the impartiality of the review, and I continue to believe that it was conducted with foregone conclusions. But regardless of what it says, by failing to release the report, the district is letting families down. Families have been forced to make lottery decisions without knowing what changes the district has in store. I have deep concerns for what this will do to our enrollment numbers next year. The uncertainty about the school's future is also undermining our staff. Teaching is hard enough without having to worry if your school will even exist next year or will be changed in ways that make it unrecognizable. The district's failure to share information is also directly undermining the governance board. It's the governance board's responsibility to see that challenges in the school are addressed. We can't do that when the district withholds information. Finally, the governance board is responsible for recommending a new school leader to the superintendent for her approval. We are in dire need of an incredible, devoted, talented, caring leader. The board met last night to define our own selection committee process for identifying a new leader to recommend. We, like you, are striving to ensure a diverse group of students, families, staff, and community partners are involved. We have a great plan to engage our community. But how can we possibly be expected to attract amazing candidates when we can't answer the basic question of what the district has in store for this school next year? I ask for your support in ensuring that this school has a future. Please instruct the district to allow Mission Hill to retain its pilot status, to make its recommendations, and let the school move forward. Our current and future students and families deserve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ruby Reyes.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruby Reyes, and I'm the Executive Director of the Boston Education Justice Alliance. The most recent announcement of the resignation of Superintendent Dr. Cassellius highlights a flawed leadership selection pattern because of the heavy-handed mayoral role in the Boston Public Schools and a compliant school committee. According to the Globe, Mayor Wu has said she wants to find a permanent replacement by June and that she wants a person familiar with Boston, feeding concerns about whether the decision has already been made. This school committee is responsible for hiring and evaluating a superintendent. We know that Mayor Wu has been heavy-handed in the decisions already made. However, this school committee needs to find someone with a proven track record of accomplishment in areas of student need like academics, special education, and community engagement focused on families and school communities. We need a superintendent who has shown that they have been able to make a school district be about learning. The backdoor politics of mayoral influence and superintendent searches has produced the same broken results, when what we need is a systems thinking superintendent with a proven track record. Please do not replicate the history of flawed searches, a formula of mayoral selected finalists with an obedient search committee of corporate and foundation interests rather than school communities. In the search process for Cassellius, the selection committee created a job description explicitly requiring at least 5 years of superintendent experience. None of the candidates met the qualifications outlined in the job description created by the school committee-led search committee. Beige's work has been in pushing a baseline budget of basic services that each school and student should have. Superintendent Cassellius began calling this a quality guarantee. We want a school leader who has addressed school budget inequities, does not want to reverse the current exam school policy, and will work to develop a master's facilities plan that focuses on making schools better rather than closing them. More importantly, we want someone with a proven track record of success when it comes to students with disabilities, English learners, and low-income students of color. A recent NBC story highlighted the Blackstone Elementary, which was promised $5 million to put up walls and doors by former interim superintendent Laura Perrell. These are the type of empty promises that are a result of the lack of follow-through from superintendent to superintendent, coupled with a lack of accountability and oversight by a school committee and mayor. The search process should be led by school communities who have been threatened and damaged by the decisions and policies administered by Boston's mayor, superintendent, and school committee. If you want to be accountable and build trust, don't settle. Select a search committee made up of parents, students, and educators whose experience and focus is equity. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Heichman. He'll be followed by Bernadette Manning, Norma Suarez, Shakita Barty, Sean Barrett, Deirdre Baugh, and Mary Lee Mara. If you could please raise your hands virtually in Zoom. Mike Heichman.
Yeah, can you, oh, here I am. Yeah, okay, good. Mike Heichman, Dorchester, Beja. I object to the process which led to the firing of Dr. Cassellius. Who made the decision? Was it Mayor Wu or Godfather Jeffrey Riley? Did the commissioner give our mayor an offer she couldn't refuse? I object to the process which was just described for the selection of our next superintendent. As a citizen and education activist, I have participated in prior searches. Never before have I witnessed the accelerator being floored. This is a rush to judgment. I also want to respectfully request that Edith Bazile be added to the search committee. That would help in terms of my trust. The budget. There are many schools that need your assistance, and it is difficult for me to single out only two. Please take care of the Shar and the Blackstone. Yes, there have been some modest improvements over the years in the lives of education of some of our children. For too many of them, there remains much suffering outside of school and insufficient resources and wisdom inside of our schools. Mayor Wu recently said, quote, "There is no reason why the BPS isn't the place where young people and families can feel like they will have the whole world open to them." Close quote. The Boston Teachers Union and the school department are in negotiations for a new contract. I have attended 2 BTU meetings and they have reported back their lack of progress with the school department. Their common good contract proposals would rapidly move us in the direction of Mayor Wu's vision. For years, we have been promised build PPS. Instead, too many of our children have been shuffled around. Too many schools have been closed. How many new and modern school facilities will be built in this proposed budget? The school department says insufficient funds. The lack of libraries and librarians is disgraceful. How many libraries and librarians are included in this proposal? Insufficient funds. How many school psychologists, guidance counselors, and social workers would be hired? Insufficient funds. Each school needs at least 1 family liaison. Insufficient funds. We need smaller class sizes. Insufficient funds. We need more funds for ethics studies. Insufficient funds. How many community hub schools with each one with a coordinator with this budget create? Insufficient funds. Why hasn't the school department embraced BTU's common good proposals? Enough of its insufficient funds. We must move rapidly so that every school has the resources necessary so that every child will have a quality education. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bernadette Manning.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, let's start the video. Let me see, so you can see me. Is that, okay, thank you. Sorry, it took a minute.
All set.
All right, thank you for your patience. All right, my name is Bernadette Manning. I've been teaching math since 1993. I joined Boston Day and Evening Academy and specifically their BDEA 2.0 program in 2019 because I wanted to work with young men of color as they deserve the best education, teachers who care, and specialized curriculum. I am here tonight to ask you for your commitment to keep BDEA 2.0 at the Timothy building. That's where we're at now. Our young men need a modern school building that is clean, safe, with updated HVAC systems, working fans, and AC. This building should have an updated cafeteria, auditorium, usable green space, and a library. This building should also have a reliable schedule for repairs and upgrades. Our young men deserve no less and must be a priority. Another need is for a full-time librarian and a library. Alternative education schools don't typically have a space for a library and a librarian. As you know, a child who can read is less likely to go to jail and more likely to get a high school diploma. I have experience working in a school with a well-versed librarian and a fully functioning library. It is magical how much of a difference this can make for the lives of the students and for the culture of the school. Right now, we have Dear Time, Drop Everything and Read, bookshelves with books and book displays around our school. But these initiatives are not getting us the results we have to have for our students. We are living in a city that boasts the greatest educational institutions in the country, but our students are not on the receiving end of that legacy. We have to change that. Thank you for your consideration in honoring our Black and Brown young men in these deeply critical ways.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Norma Suarez Keelis.
Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Okay,
Could you please turn on your camera?
I'm trying. Ana, all set?
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Un saludo cordial, gracias. Good evening. Good evening to the committee. I'm Norma Suarez. I'm a parent and also a board member for Boston Day and Evening Academy. You already heard about the 2.0 that was created for Black and Latinos. We cannot continue identify what we recognize as the groups with more vulnerable. We cannot continue identify what they need, but we need to provide what they need. It is time to provide all the resources to thrive, feel respected, integrated, and valued. This includes good food, healthy environment, nurses, security, etc. What they don't need is to be displaced. The Timothy building is a great good start for our student of 2.0. As a parent, I can give you a testimony of the importance of an alternative school when I have to let my son go from Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. Given to the fact of these alternative schools like BDA, my son was able to successfully graduate last year because he was understood in all his areas in the holistic way. Our vision is a state-of-the-art building in Nubian Square, be the premier alternative education competency-based high school in the city. BDA students from the present, past, and future deserve this, and we need to respond to them. Please answer to our students. Thank you and good evening. Norma Suarez.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chiquita Barty, followed by Sean Barrett, Deirdre Bao, Mary Lee Mara, and Fran Brangman. If you could please raise your hands in Zoom. Chiquita with us? Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, welcome.
Okay, so I'm a middle school teacher at Up Academy Boston. I'm also a parent of 4 kids in Boston Public Schools, and I'm here to talk about the pay equity issue at charter and district charter schools and turnaround schools like mine. So I'll just quickly read a letter that I have, and I'll try to be conscious of my speed for the interpreters. Sorry if I go too fast. Okay, so becoming a teacher was such an easy decision because I love the students and because I love my own children. What better profession than one where I could offer my kids at school a community of support I always wanted while in BPS, while also having a schedule similar to my own children's so I could continue to be a mom. My first and only teaching job has been at an in-district charter, Up Academy Boston, where my day technically starts at 7:15, but we have to make sure that we're reading our emails by 6:30 in the morning. And our day ends at 4:15. 9 hours every day, 45 hours every week. Yet, when I look at my pay stub, we are only paid for 35 hours a week. 10 hours a week that I can't spend with my kids. 10 hours a week that I have to pay for childcare. 10 hours a week that I can't work a second job to afford childcare. 10 hours a week where educators feel worthless. 10 hours a week where I feel like I am not valued as an educator. 10 hours a week where I feel exploited. I'm here to advocate for non-traditional schools like my own moving to a Schedule A pay scale, the same pay scale that extended learning day schools have. Moving non-traditional schools to a Schedule A pay scale won't solve every issue, but it will make educators feel a bit more valued. It will increase retention at non-traditional schools, and it will yield better results both for educators, students, and families. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sean Barrett.
Good evening, school committee. My name is Sean Barrett. I reside in South Boston, and I'm a BPS parent. I would like to discuss the district's report card with the Department of Education. In English, math, and science, there were dramatic decreases in those meeting and exceeding expectations and increases in those partially meeting and not meeting expectations for the MCAS tests. Focusing on just grades 3 to 8, in English from 2019 to 2021, 36% went from meeting or exceeding expectations to 31%. In math, 33% to 20%. In science, 25% to 19%. For Black and Hispanic students, who make up 71.7% of the student body, 29.3 and 42.4 respectively, those exceeding expectations in the MCAS were 4% in ELA, 1% in math, and 1% in science. This is abysmal. To be fair, statewide performance on the MCAS dropped from 2019 to 2021 as well. ELA 52 to 46%, math 49 to 34%, and science 47 to 41%. There is a report, in the report, it states that the COVID pandemic had a profound effect on test scores in the 2020 to 2021 school year, but note that we also underperformed against the state in 2019 by large margins. The point of this is not to blame the pandemic or the farce of remote learning for decreasing MCAS scores, but to highlight the failure of BPS to enact the Excellency for All curriculum, or EFA. During Superintendent Chang's tenure, he enacted this policy in his first 100 days. In a WBUR segment aired in 2016, then Superintendent Chang stated the EFA curriculum was going to be offered in 13 schools. The district planned to expand the program to all schools in the next 3 to 5 years. The final goal was to provide advanced rigor for all elementary school students. Excellency for All was supposed to close the achievement gap. For the 2022-23 upcoming school year, it looks like the EFA program will be expanded to 15 schools. And the only thing that seems to have closed in BPS is achievement itself, because despite not fulfilling the promise to BPS students and parents of providing a rigorous curriculum to every student, which would actually promote academic equity, came another policy change to the very few BPS students who have been exceeding expectations. BPS will have no new students added to AWC advanced work classes in grades 5 and 6, and 5 of the 10 schools that have AWC classes in grade 4 will not take new students into that grade either. BPS has spent years talking about creating equity and years talking about EFA. Meanwhile, performance across the boards in grades 3 to 8 has fallen. But all is not lost. A talking group has been formed to fix the problems in AWC, as they for sure have fixed the exam schools. This working group will develop longer-term policies for ensuring that all students have equitable access to rigorous and advanced learning opportunities. The BPS Opportunity and Achievement Gap Policy states that every child in every classroom in every school of the Boston Public School System has the same opportunity to achieve the greatness within them as anybody else. This simply is not true. The students that are in those 15 schools that have EFA next year will not have the same opportunities as those with EFA. The district can't afford to delay this implementation any longer. The children affected most by the pandemic policies of remote learning might not be fully known for years to come, but students are falling grade levels behind. Education experts say in order for high-risk students to catch up, it's going to take some extremely hard work from administrators, teachers, and families. I'm willing to do my part. I asked the school committee to expand the EFA curriculum to all elementary and K-8 schools next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Our next speaker is Deirdre Bowe.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Deirdre Ball. I am a Boston Public Schools parent. I am a teacher at Up Academy Boston. I am also the union, the BTU rep, sorry, not the BTU rep, sorry, the building rep for Up Academy Boston as well. To the Boston School Committee members and the superintendent, we, the Boston Teachers Union and staff at Up Academy Boston, Up Academy Holland, Up Academy Dorchester, and the Paul A. Dever are reaching out to address the long overdue need for alterations to our working conditions and compensation. Per the Boston Public Schools BPS Strategic Vision 2020 to 2025, schools should work to provide students with an equitable, world-class, high-quality education. We do not believe that this vision of equity for students can be achieved without also applying the same principle to staff. Yet this is not the case across BPS, as the experiences of Up Academy and the Dever staff show. The traditional BPS school has a 6-hour and 30-minute work day, with Schedule A schools having a 7-hour and 10-minute work day and earning $5,126 more per school year to compensate for the extra hours worked. Teachers at the Up schools and Dever, meanwhile, also work an extended day and school year, but without the additional compensation built into their salary schedule. As an example, educators at the Russell earn Schedule A pay for work hours of 8:15 a.m. to 3:25 p.m. In total, they work 35 hours and 50 minutes per week. At Up schools, staff have been denied Schedule A pay for work hours of 7:10 a.m. to 4:10 p.m. This is a total of 45 hours, 9 hours, and 10 minutes longer than the Russell each week. This means Up educators are working more than a full workday, longer each week for less pay overall. This gap in pay equity has led to a school day that is unsustainable for both students and staff, lowering staff morale and leading to a high staff turnover at schools as educators leave in search of more sustainable employment opportunities. The turnover is noticed by students and families who recognize the disproportionate number of new faces in their schools year to year. The constant churn undermines the sense of community and partnership that we are seeking to build with families and students.
20 seconds.
It is within the control of the district, DESE, Up Network, and the school and Main Institute to resolve these pressing issues quickly and easily, and all that is lacking is the will. The implementation of Schedule A pay at Up Academy Boston, Up Academy Holland, Up Academy Dorchester, and Paul A. Dever, and proper compensation for the hours educators at these schools work beyond Schedule A hours will create a more equitable experience for staff, reduce staff turnover, strengthen our school communities, and lead to better outcomes for our students. In closing, we are seeking a prompt reply to the letter detailing specific steps that will be taken and the timeline that will be followed to remedy the inequities we have outlined. Sincerely, the staff at Up Academy Boston, Holland, Dorchester, and the Paul A. Dever. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Lee Mara.
Oh, there I am. Hello, everybody. I'll just get right to it. My name is Mary Lee Mara. I've lived in Boston all my life, attended BPS K through 12. And for almost 25 years, I had 3 children in the BPS K through 12. I was always active in their schools and in the CPC. And last night I sat with a group of wonderful CPC parents. So they're still as great as they ever were. I'm a graduate of Boston City Hospital School of Nursing. I've been an RN for 47 years, and 40 of those years has been as a nurse educator. Madam Chairperson, this is what I wanted to say to Dr. Casilius tonight. I'm so sorry she isn't here. Dr. Casilius, I read in the papers about you personally delivering hotspots to families of BPS students during the pandemic, trying to assure access to learning for as many children as possible. Dr. Casilius, I saw you on the Brady Show talking about the BPS children, and I thought, no wonder parents can trust her. Dr. Casilius, I read your strategic plan recently, praised by this very school committee, and I felt hopeful for our communities. Dr. Casilius, then the news said that after a meeting with our new mayor, that you were leaving Boston. I think that the heart you have shown for our BPS children would have gone very far to help children achieve in the city. Parents that can attach to leaders with heart have always made good things happen in the system. A while back, there was a Dr. Harrison Jones. Parent involvement was at a fever pitch in the city. Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot has done research that showed of the many variables that can create success in our classroom. Parent involvements charge up schools, they charge up principals, and children's work harder. What are we doing in this city? What folly are you part of? We have all watched, parents have been through this before. We've watched as the power brokers. Okay. Power brokers in back rooms make decisions that leave parents out. Dr. Harrison Jones said to us, I'll never forget this quote. It was at Grove Hall, and they had done the same thing to her that they're doing to Brenda Casilius. Dr. Harrison Jones said, never underestimate the power of the parents of 65,000 children. I only wish we had the time, Dr. Casilius. Say no to the severance vote tonight, folks. You can do this. I heard it in your voice. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm done.
Excuse me, thank you. Our next speaker is Fran Brangman.
Unmute. Okay, hi. My name is Fran Brangman, also known as Fran Smith. I wanted to share this fabulous project that I worked on called Real Talk for Change Boston. It was phenomenal, and I share it with you because we got people together and we asked them, what is the future of Boston and your place in it? And then share your experience. We worked with MIT and the Center for Constructive Conversation. And then they upload all the conversations and they have these sense makers make sense of it. We would very much like to do this as part of the superintendent search with the question, what is the future of K through 12 what is your question about the future of K through 12 education in Boston? What is the experience, and share with us the experience that you had that led to that question. Then MIT and their brilliant people upload it, and then they make sense of it, and then they develop themes. So I'll end by asking you to check the portal of Real Talk for Change Boston, realtalkforchange.org, and Freedom House, and Huya, and Dunk the Vote, and the Family Nurturing Center, and a number of other organizations engaged in this process. And I'm not very good at describing the technology, but it's a fusion. Imagine this, being at the bus stop, having the conversation with parents about what we care about in terms of the future of education for our children, and sharing our experiences, building community, building understanding, and also gleaming what the most important things are from parents, students, and teachers as we move forward in the superintendent's search. I really want to thank you for your service, Chair Robinson and Mr. O'Neill. You guys have been around for almost as long as me, And yeah, I just want to thank you for your willingness to engage in new and different ways. And I'm meeting with the MIT tomorrow, and we still have some resources to move this. And we've already set up some conversations with Freedom House scholars. So please check it out and look into me or Caesar or Ron. We'd love to participate with this community engagement process. Peace and blessings and good luck. You all have a really rough job ahead of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fran. Chair Robinson, that concludes our speakers for general public comment.
Thank you. And thank you to those of you who spoke this evening and shared your perspective. Your testimony is very important to us. Our first action item this evening is the authorization of me as chair to sign a separation agreement between the Boston School Committee and Superintendent Brenda Consilius, outlined in the terms discussed by the committee a few moments ago. I'll now open it up to the committee for final questions and comments. Mr. Cardet Hernandez.
I think it's important after so many moving testimonies this evening focused on this topic to just reiterate what so many of us were saying earlier, which is a real commitment to using this search process to, one, also help in the future define a contract that feels equitable, but also defines the various scenarios that we've seen ourselves in over the last few years as we deal with transition. And so I'm committed to that process. I know I have other colleagues as well. And we hear the community asking for that and asking for that transparency in the process as well.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay. If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to authorize me as school committee chair to sign the separation agreement between the Boston School Committee and Superintendent Brenda Consilius. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Cardet Hernandez,
Yes.
Ms. Lopera,
Yes.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Mr. Tran,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
The motion is unanimous.
Thank you. Our final action item this evening is the approval of the Superintendent Search Committee membership in charge as we discussed earlier this evening. I'll now open it up to the committee for final questions and comments. Ms. Lopera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to first say that I am grateful for my proposed engagement on the search committee. Thank you for entrusting me, proposing to entrust me with this responsibility. I really understand that this is important work, that it is necessary work. And if tasked with this, I'm looking forward to working with the community and really centering community engagement through this process. I do want to state that I have consulted with the Boston Public Schools legal advisor, as well as with the State Ethics Commission. And as a result, I have filed a Chapter 26(8)A Section 23(b)(3) disclosure form with the City of Boston to address any appearance of a conflict issue based on any advocacy my current employer may engage in as it relates to the search for a superintendent, as well as my current employer's CEO's status as a BESI member. And finally, to address any conflict regarding my current employer's current contract with Boston Public Schools. And I just want to make it clear that I wholeheartedly believe that I can remain impartial and carry out my responsibilities as a search committee and school committee member
to interview and recommend candidates for superintendent and ultimately vote on a candidate. For me, this is personal, this is a work, and I understand that this would be being entrusted by the community to do this. So just wanted to make sure that my colleagues and the public were aware of that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaPera. Mr. Tran.
Yes. I don't know whether my request is something that is appropriate or not, but I'm going to raise it here anyway. For the purpose of uniformity and transparency, as a matter of fact, is it possible for us as member of the BPS committee to have access to the list of questions that the interviewing committee? I understand that we'll have the final interview anyway, but just for the purpose of uniformity, could we have access to the list of questions as well as background information about the candidates that are that the committee will ask to come for the for the first interview?
Mr. O'Neill, I'm going to call on you for a response.
Mr. Tran, historically, and I do believe this search committee would certainly follow that process. There will be very regular updates. I think the chair has asked the search committee to consider updating the school committee at every other school committee meeting coming up about the process. Historically, the search committee has updated the school committee on a general range of what the breakdown is of the pool that they're looking at with regards to gender, ethnicity, experience, that type of thing, while also working with the search firm and how to phrase it to preserve confidentiality. You wouldn't want to say, for example, and this is purely a hypothetical example, you're looking at one male superintendent from XYZ, and then that would risk it. And so risk the confidentiality. Excuse me, Ms. Mackey, thank you. So I believe the chair is planning on having the search committee update the school committee on a very regular basis, which would include that type of information. I think also in the past, the search committee, as part of their listening process, has encouraged input from the community and from the school committee of what type of questions should we be asking to, when we prepare to actually interview candidates. So I hope that gives you some guidance. It would obviously be up to the leadership of this search committee, which would include Ms. LaPera and President Eppinger and Marcus. I apologize, Chair.
Marcus McNeil. He's McNeil.
McNeil, thank you. Okay. Marcus McNeil, as a educator, a parent, and a student, they're going to be the leadership of the search committee. So I think they will set the parameters of how they'll be gathering input as well as what they'll be sharing with the school committee. Is that helpful, Mr. Tran?
Yes, thank you. To a certain extent, it helps. But we have been hearing a lot of community outcry for lack of involvement. I understand that we are trying the best we can to include community involvement in all the critical processes that we initiate. I understand that I was also involved in the last superintendent search, and I understand that that I did, as other members of the committee, receive ongoing update. My question is a little more toward the concern of the committee, balancing between confidentiality as required by law, and community concern. I'm hopeful that there will be ways to somehow mitigate that concern. I understand that we have the ability to recommend questions and to recommend certain kind of concerns that we have, to the committee prior to these kind of interviews. Without having the deadline, I guess, but again, I'm just appealing to all of you for the in the committee, in the search committee, that community transparency has always been a live wire, for lack of a better term, in this kind of crucial processes. So I understand, again, balancing between confidentiality and community concern. That is pretty complicated, but we have to find a way to alleviate that concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Understood.
Are there any other questions? Mr. Cardet Hernandez.
Just want to thank you, Chair Robinson, too, for your leadership here and continuing to keep us all informed on this process while it's moving quickly. And I know that while this committee is smaller than previous search committees, I feel that we are equally, all of us are aligned in terms of value around how important this space will be to continue to share out what's happening on that search committee, where it makes sense and where it's appropriate. And I think it's been really clear tonight as well how much this group is committed to making sure that there are opportunities for community input. And so I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. Right. So, are there any other further questions? If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the membership in charge of the Superintendent Search Committee as presented. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Okay.
Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Alkins,
Yes.
Mr. Cardet Hernandez,
Yes.
Ms. Lopera,
Abstain.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Abstain.
abstain? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Thank you. Mr. Tran,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes with 5 yeas and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. We'll now move on to public comment on reports. Ms. Sullivan?
Thank you, Chair. We have no speakers for public comment on reports.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Is there any new business? Ms. LaPera?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is just a comment of appreciation for Ms. Mercer. I know that she had her February break last week, and she participated in a high school internship program supporting students at the Warren Prescott. So just wanted to take the opportunity to thank her for her leadership, for her continued involvement. And I really hope that education is in her world and in her future, especially if she ends up going to a place like BC. I mean, no pressure or anything, but just thank you for your continued leadership and your everyday leadership. And I know that those kiddos really appreciated you and are singing your praises because word is making it over to me to share your work there. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our business for this evening. The school committee will hold a remote retreat on Tuesday, March 8th at 5 p.m. On March 16th, the committee will hold an FY23 budget hearing at 5 p.m., followed by a regular school committee meeting at 6 p.m. If there's nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Sullivan, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Alkins,
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Mr. Cardet Hernandez,
Yes.
Ms. Lopera,
Yes, buenas noches.
Ms. Polanco Garcia,
Yes.
Yes.
can hear you. Yes.
Gracias. Mr. Tran,
yes, and good night.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Robinson.
Yes, thank you and good night. The meeting is adjourned.